The wagon wheel cracked against a jagged rock, and Katherine Johnson felt the impact shoot through her broken leg like a lightning strike, her scream tearing across the empty Nevada desert as consciousness threatened to abandon her once more. 3 states. She had endured 3 God-forsaken states in this wagon, each mile worse than the last. Her uncle had promised to get her to California, to the doctor in Sacramento who could set her leg properly after the horse had crushed it outside their farm in Kansas. That was before cholera took him somewhere in Colorado. The wagon driver he had hired, a cruel man named Polk, had continued on only because he had been paid in advance. He drove without mercy, without care for her agony, stopping only when his own body demanded it. The September sun of 1873 beat down mercilessly as they crossed into Utah territory. Katherine was 22 years old, and she was certain she would die before seeing 23. The leg had swollen grotesquely, the makeshift splint her uncle had fashioned now cutting into infected flesh. Fever came and went in waves. She had not eaten properly in days. Polk threw her water and hardtack as though feeding a dog. "Please," she whispered through cracked lips. "Please, I need to rest, to stop." Polk did not even turn around. "We stop when I say we stop. Got a schedule to keep." The wagon lurched again, and this time Katherine bit through her lip to keep from screaming. Blood filled her mouth. She could taste nothing else anymore. Blood and dust and the copper tang of her own fear. They passed through a settlement called Circleville just after noon. Katherine tried to call out to beg someone for help, but her voice barely carried over the rattle of the wagon wheels. She saw people watching them pass. Women in bonnets, men outside the general store, a blacksmith at his forge. No one stopped them. Perhaps they thought she was merely sleeping in the back. Perhaps they did not care about one more suffering soul passing through their town. 5 miles outside Circleville, the wagon wheel that had been threatening to break finally gave way. The entire left side collapsed, sending the wagon crashing onto its axle. Katherine was thrown against the wooden side, her broken leg striking the boards. This time she did scream, long and loud, a sound that belonged more to a wounded animal than a human woman. Polk cursed viciously, climbing down to assess the damage. He stared at the shattered wheel, then at Katherine writhing in the wagon bed. His face hardened. "This is where you get off," he said flatly. Katherine could barely focus through the pain. "What? You heard me. I cannot fix this wheel with your weight in the wagon, and I cannot be bothered to fix it at all with you slowing me down. There is a town back there. Crawl to it if you have to. You cannot leave me here. I cannot walk. Please, I will die out here." Polk was already unhitching the horses. He tied them to a dead juniper tree and began transferring his own supplies and saddle from the wagon. "Should have thought of that before you broke your leg. Not my problem anymore. My uncle paid you. He paid you to get me to California. Your uncle is dead. Contract died with him." Polk worked quickly, efficiently, taking everything of value. When he was finished, he mounted one of the horses and took the lead rope of the other. He looked down at Katherine one last time. "Good luck, Miss Johnson. You are going to need it." He rode west without looking back. Katherine lay in the wagon, staring up at the brilliant blue sky, and felt something inside her break that had nothing to do with bones. She was alone, truly alone. 5 miles from town with a shattered leg, fever burning through her, and not even water left to wet her lips. She must have passed out because when she opened her eyes again, the sun had moved considerably lower in the sky. The pain was now a constant roar, no longer coming in waves but simply existing as her entire reality. She tried to move, to drag herself from the wagon, but her body would not obey. Her leg had bent at an angle that made her stomach heave. This was how she would die. Alone in the desert, in a broken wagon, 22 years old with nothing to show for her life but pain. She heard the horse before she saw it. The steady clip of hooves on the hard, packed earth. For a moment, hope flared. Perhaps Polk had come back. Perhaps he had found his conscience, but the man who appeared was not Polk. He was tall, dressed in dusty trail clothes and a wide-brimmed hat that shadowed his face. He rode a paint horse that looked as weathered as its rider. When he drew close enough for Katherine to see his face, she found herself looking at a man perhaps 26 or 27 years old, with sun-darkened skin and eyes that held the particular emptiness of someone who had spent too long alone. He stopped his horse beside the wagon. Those empty eyes took in the scene with practiced efficiency. The broken wheel, Katherine's condition, the tracks leading west. "Driver left you," he said. It was not a question. Katherine tried to speak but could only nod. The man dismounted. He moved with the fluid economy of someone who wasted no motion, no energy. He approached the wagon and looked at her leg. Something flickered across his face. Not pity exactly. Something harder. Recognition, perhaps. The acknowledgement of one suffering soul seeing another. "How long have you been like this?" His voice was low, rough from disuse. The leg, 3 weeks. The wagon, 3 states. Katherine managed to force the words out. "Traveling from Kansas, trying to reach California. 3 states in a wagon with a broken leg." The man's jaw tightened. "That is not traveling, that is torture." Had no choice. "Uncle said there was a doctor in Sacramento, best bone doctor west of St. Louis. Then my uncle died, and the driver did not care about anything except getting west." Katherine felt tears burning in her eyes. "Please. Can you help me get to Circleville? I saw it back there. I have a little money, not much but some. I can pay you." The man studied her for a long moment. She could not read his expression beneath the shadow of his hat. Then he shook his head. "You are not going anywhere in this wagon. And you are not riding 5 miles on horseback, not with that leg, and not with that fever." He turned back to his horse and began untying his bedroll. "We camp here tonight. I will carry you to Circleville tomorrow." "Carry me? Sir, I cannot ask you to. You did not ask. I am telling you." He spread the bedroll in the shade of the broken wagon. "Name is Atticus Abernathy. Been riding circuit for 2 years, doing odd jobs, moving from town to town. Was heading through to Colorado when I saw the wagon. Now help me get you out of there before you hurt yourself worse." Atticus moved with surprising gentleness for a man with such rough edges. He climbed into the wagon and carefully, so carefully, lifted Katherine in his arms. Even with his caution, the movement sent fresh agony through her leg. She cried out against his shoulder. "I know," he said quietly. "I know it hurts. Just breathe. Almost done." He laid her on the bedroll and immediately went to examine her leg. His hands were steady, confident. "You had this splinted proper. My uncle did it. He had served in the war, knew about injuries. He did good work. But 3 weeks in a wagon undid most of it." Atticus looked up at her face. "I need to reset this splint, tighten it. It is going to hurt worse than anything you have felt so far. Do you understand?" Katherine felt her breath catch. "How much worse?" "Considerably." He said it honestly, without sugar-coating. "But if I do not do it, you will lose the leg. Infection is already setting in. I can see it, smell it. The bone needs to be immobilized properly, and we need to clean the wounds where the old splint cut into you. You know what you are doing." "I was a field medic in the Army. Served 5 years before I got my discharge. I have set more broken bones than I can count." His eyes met hers. "I will do my best not to hurt you more than necessary, but I will not lie to you. This will be bad." Katherine closed her eyes. She had no choice. She was going to die out here if she did not trust this stranger. "All right, do it." Atticus worked quickly. He built a small fire and boiled water from his canteen. He had a kit with him, supplies that spoke of someone who had indeed worked as a medic. While the water heated, he carefully cut away the old splint and the bandages beneath. The smell that rose from her leg made Katherine gag. "Bad," she whispered. "I have seen worse. You will keep the leg." He cleaned his hands thoroughly, then soaked cloth in the hot water. "This is going to sting." It did more than sting. It felt like he was washing her leg with liquid fire. Katherine bit down on the leather strap he gave her and tried not to scream. Atticus worked with focused intensity, cleaning away the infection, the dead tissue, the accumulated filth of 3 weeks of neglect. His hands never shook, his attention never wavered. "Good," he said softly. "You are doing good. Almost done with this part." Then came the splinting. He had found 2 straight branches from a dead tree and was using them to reinforce the leg. "I need to straighten the bone first," he told her. "On 3. 1, 2. He did it on 2, not 3, and Katherine screamed so loud she thought her throat would tear. The world went white with pain. She felt his hands holding the leg firm, felt the bone grinding, and then suddenly the angle was right and he was wrapping it tight with clean bandages. "Done," Atticus said. "Done. Breathe, just breathe." Katherine was sobbing, unable to stop. Atticus did not try to comfort her with empty words. He simply finished securing the splint, making sure it was tight enough to immobilize but not so tight as to cut off circulation. Then he wetted a cloth and laid it across her forehead. "Fever will get worse tonight before it gets better. I have some willow bark tea. It will help with the pain and the fever both." He moved to prepare it, his movements efficient and calm. "When did you last eat?" "I do not remember. Days maybe." "That is not acceptable." He began pulling supplies from his pack. "Hardtack, jerky, some dried fruit. You need to eat. Cannot fight infection on an empty stomach." "I do not think I can." "You will." There was no anger in his voice, just flat certainty. "I did not just put you through all that to have you give up now." As the sun set over the Utah desert, Atticus made her eat small bites of softened hardtack and sips of the bitter willow bark tea. He did not push too hard, did not force, but he was insistent, patient. When she finally could eat no more, he covered her with a blanket from his pack. "Sleep if you can. I will keep watch." "Watch for what? Animals, drifters, whatever might come." He settled with his back against the wagon wheel, his rifle across his knees. "You are safe. Sleep." Katherine looked at this stranger who had stopped his own journey to help her. "Why are you doing this?" Atticus was quiet for so long she thought he would not answer. Then, "Because someone should have stopped for you in that town. Someone should have heard you screaming in this wagon and done something, and no one did, so I am doing it now. You do not even know me." "No. But I know what it is like to hurt and have no one care. I know what it is like to be alone." He adjusted his hat lower over his eyes. "Get some rest, Miss Johnson." Katherine closed her eyes, though she did not expect to sleep. But exhaustion and the willow bark tea pulled her under despite the pain. And for the first time in weeks, she slept without the constant jostling of the wagon keeping her in perpetual agony. She woke several times through the night. Each time, Atticus was exactly where he had been, rifle ready, eyes scanning the darkness. Once she woke to find him adding wood to the fire. Another time he was checking her fever with the back of his hand against her forehead. "Still high," he murmured, not realizing she was awake. "But not higher. That is something." When dawn broke pale and gold over the desert, Atticus stood and stretched. He looked like he had not slept at all, but his movements were still sure and steady. He made coffee and cooked some beans, which he shared with her. "Circleville is 5 miles. In your condition, I will carry you there on foot, faster than trying to rig you on the horse, more stable too." He said it matter-of-factly, as though carrying a grown woman 5 miles was an ordinary task. "We will stop when we need to. No rush. Your driver might have had a schedule, but I do not. I can try to ride. I do not want to burden you. You are not a burden, and no, you cannot ride. The jostling would tear apart everything I just fixed. He finished his coffee and began packing up camp. Besides, I said I would carry you, so I will carry you. He fashioned a sort of sling from his blanket, tying it around his shoulders so that he could carry Katherine on his back with her broken leg supported and immobilized. It took several attempts to find a position that did not cause her unbearable pain, but eventually they managed it. "Ready?" he asked. "As I will ever be." Atticus began walking. Katherine could feel the strength in his shoulders, the steadiness of his gait. He moved like a man accustomed to hard travel, to carrying heavy loads. He did not speak much, conserving his energy for the walk, but his grip on her was secure. The sun rose higher and the heat began to build. Katherine worried that Atticus would tire, would need to put her down, but he just kept walking. His shirt grew damp with sweat, and she could hear his breathing grow heavier, but his pace never slowed. "You can rest," she said. "Please." "I know this is difficult. I will rest when we get to town, not before." His voice was strained but determined. "Told you I would carry you, not going to stop halfway." They had traveled perhaps 3 miles when they saw the riders approaching from the direction of Circleville. 3 men on horseback, riding at an easy pace. When they spotted Atticus and Katherine, they urged their horses into a trot. "Need help there, friend?" called the lead rider, a middle-aged man with a sheriff's star pinned to his vest. Atticus stopped. "Got a woman here with a broken leg. Her driver abandoned her 5 miles back. I am taking her to town." The sheriff rode closer, his eyes taking in Katherine's condition. "My God, how long has she been like this?" 3 weeks, from what she tells me. Traveled 3 states in a wagon." The sheriff's expression darkened. "That is inhumane. Here, let us help you. We can get her to town faster on horseback." "No," Atticus said firmly. "Leg needs to stay immobilized. She rides and the splint shifts. All my work is undone." One of the other men, younger and eager, said, "We could make a travois. Rig it between 2 horses. Still too much jostling on this terrain. Walking is smoother." Atticus adjusted his grip on Katherine. "I have got her, just 2 more miles, but if you have water to spare, we could use it." The sheriff handed over his canteen. "You are a good man, stranger." "What is your name?" "Atticus Abernathy." "I am Sheriff Dalton. These are my deputies, Marcus and Jim. We will ride alongside you, make sure you get to town safe." The sheriff studied Atticus with open respect. "Not many men would do what you are doing." "Not many men should need to," Atticus replied. He drank some water and helped Katherine drink as well, then resumed walking. The sheriff and his deputies kept pace, occasionally offering to spell Atticus, but he refused each time. Katherine could feel him tiring now, could feel the slight tremor in his muscles, but he never complained. Never suggested stopping. He had said he would carry her to Circleville, and he was going to do exactly that. When the town finally came into view, Katherine felt tears spring to her eyes. Buildings, people, civilization. She had begun to think she would never see such things again. Atticus carried her straight to the doctor's office, a small white building near the center of town. Sheriff Dalton ran ahead to alert the doctor, and by the time Atticus walked through the door, the doctor was ready. "Put her on the table here," said the doctor, an older man with kind eyes and steady hands. "Carefully now." Atticus lowered Katherine onto the examination table with the same gentleness he had shown throughout. Then he stepped back, and Katherine saw how exhausted he truly was. His face was flushed from exertion, his shirt soaked through with sweat, his hands shaking slightly now that he had set her down. "You need to sit," the doctor told him. "Before you fall down, Sarah," he called to the back room. "Bring water and food for this man. He looks half dead." "I am fine," Atticus said, but his voice was hoarse. "You are not fine. You just carried a full-grown woman 5 miles in the Utah heat. Sit down before I have 2 patients instead of 1. The doctor was already examining Catherine's leg. "Now let me see what we have here. Oh my. Oh, this is bad, but the splinting is excellent. Who did this work?" "He did," Katherine said, nodding toward Atticus. The doctor looked up with new appreciation. "You have medical training, Army medic. 5 years. It shows. This is better work than half the doctors I know could do in field conditions. You may have saved her leg." The doctor continued his examination, gentle but thorough. "The infection is concerning, but not as bad as it could be. How long ago did you clean and splint this?" "Last night." "Well, you have a gift, Mr. Abernathy. This young woman is very lucky you found her." The doctor looked at Katherine. "What is your name, dear?" "Katherine Johnson." "Well, Miss Johnson, you have been through hell, but I think we can pull you through. The bone is broken in 2 places, but the alignment is good now. We will need to keep you off that leg for several weeks, keep the infection at bay, build your strength back up. Do you have family here?" "Someone to care for you," Katherine felt her heart sink. "No, I was traveling to California. My uncle who was with me died of cholera in Colorado. The driver he hired abandoned me." "I see." The doctor frowned. "Well, we will figure something out. For now, let me treat this infection and get some proper food and rest into you." Sheriff Dalton spoke up from where he had been standing by the door. "Doc, what about the boarding house? Mrs. Fletcher takes in boarders. She might have room." "I can pay," Katherine said quickly. "I have some money." "Not much, but some." "We will worry about that later," the doctor said firmly. "First things first. Let me get you cleaned up and comfortable. Mr. Abernathy, I am serious about you resting. You look like you are about to keel over." Atticus had indeed sat down, more collapsing into the chair than sitting. The doctor's wife, Sarah, brought him water and bread, which he accepted with a quiet thank you. He drank the entire pitcher of water without stopping. "When did you last sleep?" Sarah asked, concerned. 2 days ago." "Maybe 3. Lord have mercy. You are going to rest, young man. I will not have you dying of exhaustion after such a heroic deed." She looked at her husband. "Charles, this man needs a bed as much as Miss Johnson does." "Agreed. Mr. Abernathy, you are staying here tonight. We have a room in the back for emergencies. You will use it. I should move on. I have places to be." "No, you do not," the doctor said bluntly. "You have nowhere to be that is more important than recovering from heat exhaustion. You stay here tonight, that is final." Atticus looked like he wanted to argue, but his body had other ideas. His eyes were already drooping. "Just tonight, then." "We will see about that. Sarah, get him to the back room. Miss Johnson, let me start treating this infection. This is going to sting." As Sarah led Atticus away, he looked back at Katherine. Their eyes met across the room, and Katherine felt something shift in her chest. This man, this stranger, had saved her life. He had stopped his own journey, had carried her 5 miles through the desert heat, had tended her wounds with skilled hands and a gentle touch, and she did not even really know him. "Thank you," she said, pouring every ounce of feeling she could into those 2 words. Atticus nodded once, then let Sarah guide him away. The doctor worked on Katherine for over an hour, cleaning the infection more thoroughly, applying medicines that burned and stung, rewrapping the leg with fresh bandages. He gave her laudanum for the pain and a draft to help with the fever. By the time he was finished, Katherine could barely keep her eyes open. "Sleep now," Dr. Charles said kindly. "When you wake, we will talk about what comes next, but for now, just rest. You are safe here." Katherine slept for 16 hours straight. When she finally woke, it was the next morning, and sunlight was streaming through the window of the room where she lay. For the first time in weeks, She did not wake to the sound of wagon wheels or the smell of desert dust. She woke to birdsong and the scent of bread baking. Sarah appeared in the doorway almost immediately. "Oh good, you are awake. How do you feel?" "Like I am alive." Catherine's voice was rough but stronger than it had been. "Is that bread I smell?" "It is indeed." "Are you hungry?" "Starving." "Excellent, that is a very good sign." Sarah bustled in with a tray. "I have eggs and bread and tea. You need to eat slowly at first. Your stomach has been empty too long." Catherine ate carefully, savoring every bite. Real food, warm food. It tasted like salvation. "Where is Mr. Abernathy?" she asked between bites. "Still sleeping." "That man was completely exhausted. I checked on him an hour ago and he has not moved since he lay down. He will probably sleep the whole day." Sarah sat in the chair beside the bed. "He is a good man. Not many would have done what he did." "I know. I owe him my life." "You owe him a debt that cannot be repaid, dear. But I suspect he does not expect repayment. Men like that do not." Sarah poured more tea. "Now, we need to talk about your situation. The sheriff sent a wire to California, to the authorities there, reporting what happened to you. The driver who abandoned you is a wanted man now. But that does not solve your immediate problem, which is that you need somewhere to stay while you recover. The boarding house the sheriff mentioned. I already spoke to Mrs. Fletcher. She has a room and she is willing to let you stay. The cost is $3 a week, meals included. Can you manage that?" Catherine did some quick mental calculations. She had $27 left from what her uncle had given her. That would give her 9 weeks. "I can manage it for a while, but I will need to find work eventually." "With that leg, dear, you will not be walking for at least a month, maybe longer, and even then you will need crutches for months after that. Then I will find work I can do sitting down, sewing perhaps, mending. I cannot just sit idle while my money runs out." Sarah smiled. "You have spirit." "I like that. We will figure something out. For now, just focus on healing." Atticus emerged from the back room around mid-afternoon. He looked better, more human, though still exhausted. His hair was damp from washing and he had shaved. Catherine was struck by how young he actually was. Cleaned up and rested, he could not be more than 26 or 27. His eyes still held that emptiness she had noticed before, but there was something else there now too, a spark of life that had not been there in the desert. "How are you feeling?" he asked, stopping in the doorway of her room. "Better. Thanks to you." Catherine gestured to the chair. "Will you sit? I feel like I should properly thank you, and I cannot do that with you standing in the doorway." Atticus sat, though he looked uncomfortable with the attention. "You do not need to thank me. I did what needed doing." "You did more than that. You saved my life. That driver would have left me to die, and I would have if you had not come along. Then I am glad I came along." He looked at her leg, now properly bandaged and elevated. "Doctor says you will keep the leg, that you will walk again. He said it will take months, that I will need crutches for a long time, but you will walk. That is what matters." Atticus leaned back in the chair. "What will you do now? You said you were headed to California." "I still am. Eventually, when I can travel again. There is a doctor there in Sacramento, the best bone doctor west of St. Louis. My uncle said he could help me if anything went wrong. Well, everything went wrong, but I made it this far. I can make it the rest of the way once I heal." "That is a long journey to make alone. I know, but I do not have much choice." Catherine studied his face. "What about you? Where were you headed?" "Colorado. There is work there in the mines. Thought I might try my hand at it for a while." "You do not sound enthusiastic about it." Atticus shrugged. "I have not been enthusiastic about much of anything for a long time. I just move from place to place, work when I need money, move on when I get restless. Been doing it for 2 years now." "That sounds lonely." "It is. But it is better than staying in one place and feeling lonely there." He said it without self-pity, just stating a fact. Katherine wanted to ask more, to understand what had happened to make this capable, kind man so isolated from the world, but she could see he was already retreating back into himself. "Will you stay in Circleville for a while? Or are you leaving soon?" "I should leave. I have already delayed my own plans. But will you?" She was not sure why it mattered so much, but it did. The thought of him leaving, of never seeing him again, made something clench in her chest. Atticus met her eyes, and for a moment something passed between them. Understanding, maybe. Recognition. "I do not know," he said honestly. "I have not decided yet." Sheriff Dalton arrived later that afternoon with news. "We found the wagon," he told Katherine. "Or what is left of it. Looks like someone stripped it for parts. Your belongings were scattered around." "We recovered what we could." He set a small bundle on the bed. "This was all we found. I am sorry." Katherine looked through the bundle. A few dresses, torn and dusty, her mother's Bible, a tintype photograph of her parents, some small personal items. Everything else was gone. "Thank you for looking, Sheriff. That driver, Polk, we are looking for him. He will face charges when we find him. Abandoning you like that, it is criminal." The sheriff's face was grim. "You would have died out there, I know, but I did not, thanks to Mr. Abernathy. Speaking of whom, I would like to offer you a job, Mr. Abernathy," the sheriff said, turning to Atticus. "My deputy Jim is leaving next month. His wife is expecting their first child, and they are moving back east to be near her family. I need someone to replace him. You have the skills, the demeanor. Pay is $30 a month plus room and board. What do you say?" Atticus looked genuinely surprised. "I have no law enforcement experience." "You have Army experience. You know how to handle yourself, how to stay calm in difficult situations. I saw that yesterday when you brought Miss Johnson in. And this town needs good men. We are growing, getting more settlers every month. I could use someone like you." "I will think about it," Atticus said carefully. "You do that. Offer stands for 2 weeks. After that, I need to find someone else." The sheriff tipped his hat to Katherine. "Miss Johnson, you let me know if you need anything. The whole town is talking about what happened to you. Folk around here take care of their own. But I am not from here. You are here now. That makes you one of ours." He smiled kindly and left. Katherine looked at Atticus. "That is a good offer. It is. But you are not sure you want to take it." "I am not sure about anything." He stood. "I should let you rest. Doctor says you need sleep. Will you come back tomorrow?" He paused at the door. "Why?" "Because I would like to see you again. To talk. You are the only person I know in this town." Something softened in Atticus's face. "All right, I will come back tomorrow." He did come back, and the day after that, and the day after that. At first, he just sat quietly while Katherine talked, telling him about her life in Kansas, about the farm her family had owned, about her parents who had died when she was 19, about her uncle who had taken her in. She told him about the horse that had broken her leg, about the 3 awful weeks in the wagon, about everything. Atticus listened. He was good at listening. He did not interrupt or offer platitudes. He just listened with that same focused intensity he brought to everything. On the 4th day, Katherine convinced him to tell her about himself. It came out slowly, haltingly. He was from Missouri originally. His parents had died when he was 16. He had joined the Army at 18, served as a medic for 5 years. He had seen action in the Indian Wars, had patched up more wounded soldiers than he could count. When his enlistment ended 2 years ago, he had simply started drifting. "Why?" Katherine asked gently. "Because the war changed me. The things I saw, the things I did. I came back and everything felt wrong, too quiet, too peaceful. I did not know how to live in that world anymore." He stared at his hands. "So I left, started moving, figured maybe I would find somewhere that felt right, somewhere I could stop and breathe again. Have you found it? No, not yet. But Katherine noticed he kept coming back. Every day he visited. Sometimes he stayed for hours, sometimes just a few minutes. But he came. And slowly, so slowly she almost did not notice it happening, the emptiness in his eyes began to fill. 2 weeks after they arrived in Circleville, Katherine moved to Mrs. Fletcher's boarding house. Atticus carried her there himself, refusing to let anyone else do it. Mrs. Fletcher was a widow in her 50s, brisk and efficient but not unkind. She showed Katherine to a room on the ground floor, which was important since Katherine could not manage stairs. "I run a respectable establishment," Mrs. Fletcher said firmly. "No drinking, no loud noises after 9 o'clock, and absolutely no gentlemen callers in your room." "I understand." "Mr. Abernathy, you can visit Miss Johnson in the parlor during appropriate hours. That is where all my boarders receive guests." Atticus nodded seriously. "Yes, madam." Life settled into a rhythm. Katherine's leg healed slowly. Dr. Charles visited twice a week to check her progress and change the bandages. The infection cleared, which was a huge relief. He fitted her with crutches after 3 weeks, and Katherine began the painful process of learning to use them. Atticus was there for her first attempt. He hovered anxiously while she struggled to stand, to balance, to move without putting weight on her injured leg. "I feel like a newborn calf," Katherine said, frustrated after she nearly fell for the 3rd time. "You are doing well. It takes time." He positioned himself close enough to catch her if she fell, but far enough to let her try on her own. "How much time?" "As much as it takes. There is no rushing healing." Katherine made it across the room and back before her arms gave out. She collapsed into a chair, sweating and exhausted. "That was horrible. That was progress." Atticus smiled, a real smile that transformed his entire face. Katherine realized it was the first time she had seen him truly smile. It made her breath catch. "You should do that more often," she said without thinking. "Do what?" "Smile, it suits you." Atticus looked down, but the smile lingered. "I have not had much reason to smile lately. And now I am finding reasons again." He met her eyes. "Sheriff Dalton asked me again about the deputy position. The deadline is tomorrow. What are you going to tell him?" "I am going to accept." Katherine felt joy bloom in her chest. "Really? You are going to stay?" "I am going to stay, for a while at least." He cleared his throat. "This town feels right. Or maybe it is just that you are here, and leaving would mean not seeing you again, and I find I do not want that." It was the most honest thing he had said to her, the most vulnerable. Katherine reached out and took his hand. "I do not want that either. I am glad you are staying, Atticus." He squeezed her hand gently. "Me too." Atticus became Deputy Abernathy the next week. He took to the work naturally, his calm demeanor and military training serving him well. The town liked him. He was fair, capable, and did not abuse his authority. Sheriff Dalton told everyone who would listen that hiring Atticus was the best decision he had made in years. Katherine, meanwhile, began taking in sewing work. Mrs. Fletcher spread the word that Miss Johnson was an excellent seamstress and could mend anything. At first, the work was sporadic, but as word spread and people saw the quality of her work, more customers came. She could not do heavy labor, could not stand for long periods, but she could sit and sew, and that was enough. She and Atticus fell into a comfortable pattern. He stopped by the boarding house every evening after his shift, and they would sit in the parlor and talk. Sometimes other boarders joined them, but often it was just the two of them. They talked about everything and nothing. Books they had read, places they wanted to see, memories from childhood. Slowly they learned each other. Katherine discovered that Atticus had a dry sense of humor that caught her off guard. He discovered that Katherine could argue politics with the best of them, and was not afraid to challenge his opinions. They played chess, which Katherine usually won. They read to each other from whatever books were available. They simply existed in each other's company, comfortable and easy. One evening in November, 3 months after they had met, Atticus arrived at the boarding house with a package. "What is this?" Katherine asked, taking the brown paper-wrapped parcel. "Open it and see." Inside was a beautifully carved wooden cane, the handle smooth and fitted perfectly for a woman's hand. The wood was polished to a deep shine, and someone had carved a delicate pattern of flowers along the length. "Atticus, this is beautiful. Where did you get it?" "I made it. Been working on it in my spare time. Thought you might want something nicer than those crutches once your leg is strong enough." He looked almost shy. "Do you like it?" "I love it. It is the most thoughtful gift anyone has ever given me." Katherine ran her fingers over the carved flowers. "When did you learn to do this?" "In the army. There was a lot of waiting around between battles. Had to do something to pass the time. An old sergeant taught me woodworking." He sat beside her. "Try it out, see if the height is right." Katherine stood, using the cane for support. It was perfect, the right height, the right weight. She took a few steps and it worked beautifully. "It is perfect. Thank you, Atticus, thank you so much. I am glad you like it." He watched her walk with obvious pleasure. "You are getting stronger. The limp is barely noticeable now. Dr. Charles says I will always have a limp. The breaks were too severe, but he says I should regain most of my mobility." Katherine sat back down, still holding the cane. "I never thought I would walk again. When I was in that wagon, I was certain I would die, and now look at me. Walking, working, living, it feels like a miracle. You are strong. You did the hard work of healing. With your help, without you, none of this would have happened." Katherine set the cane aside and took his hand. It had become natural between them, this casual touching. Hands held, arms linked when they walked, shoulders brushing as they sat together. "I owe you everything, Atticus. You do not owe me anything. I owe you my life. And you have given me more than that. You have given me friendship, purpose, a reason to smile again." She squeezed his hand. "You said you were looking for a place that felt right. Have you found it?" Atticus looked at their joined hands, then up at her face. "Yes, I think I have." "Will you stay then? After the winter, when spring comes and the roads are clear again? Where would I go? Everything I want is right here." He said it simply, honestly. Then his expression shifted, became more serious. "Katherine, I need to tell you something, need to be honest with you." "All right. When I found you in that wagon, I was not heading to Colorado. I was not heading anywhere in particular. I had been riding for days without purpose, without direction. Truth is, I was not sure I wanted to keep going at all. I was so tired, so empty." His voice roughened. "Then I saw that broken wagon, and I saw you, and something in me woke up. Something I thought was dead." Katherine felt her heart beating faster. "What woke up?" "The will to keep living. The belief that maybe I could still do some good in this world, that maybe I still mattered." He turned to face her fully. "You gave me that. Just by being there, by needing help, by fighting so hard to survive. You reminded me that life is precious, that every moment matters. And then I got to know you, and I found out that you are funny and smart and brave. That talking to you is the best part of my day. That thinking about you makes me smile." "Atticus," Katherine whispered, hardly daring to breathe. "I am saying this badly. I am not good with words." He took both her hands now. "What I am trying to say is that I care for you deeply. More than I have ever cared for anyone. And I know I am just a deputy with no real prospects. I know you were planning to go to California to continue on with your life. But I had to tell you how I feel. I had to be honest." Katherine felt tears welling in her eyes. Happy tears. "Atticus, you foolish man. Do you really not know how I feel about you? I hoped, but I did not want to assume. I love you." The words came out with absolute certainty. I have loved you since that first day when you carried me 5 miles through the desert without complaint. When you tended my leg and promised I would keep it. When you sat with me night after night and let me talk. I love you, Atticus Abernathy, and I do not want to go to California. I want to stay right here with you. Atticus's face transformed. The emptiness she had seen in his eyes that first day was gone completely, replaced by something bright and alive and so full of feeling it took her breath away. You mean that? Every word. I love you. He kissed her then, gentle and sweet, his hands cupping her face like she was something precious. Katherine kissed him back, pouring everything she felt into that kiss. 3 months of growing affection, of friendship deepening into love, of two broken people finding wholeness in each other. When they finally pulled apart, both were smiling. I love you too, Atticus said, as if the words had been waiting inside him. I love you so much, Katherine. So what do we do now? Now, he smiled that transformative smile. Now we build a life together. They told Mrs. Fletcher the next day. She took one look at them, at the way they could not stop smiling at each other, and shook her head with fond exasperation. I knew this would happen the moment Deputy Abernathy started visiting every single day. You two are besotted. But she was smiling. I suppose you will want to get married. Yes, madam, Atticus said. If Katherine will have me, of course I will have you. Well then, you will need to do it properly. This is a respectable town. You will court properly for at least 3 months, then have a proper engagement, then a proper wedding. Mrs. Fletcher counted on her fingers. That means a spring wedding at the earliest. I will not have people gossiping about my boarders. 3 months of courting, then an engagement, then a wedding, Atticus repeated. I can do that. Though truthfully, waiting months to marry you sounds like torture, Katherine said once Mrs. Fletcher had left them alone in the parlor. The wait will be worth it. We have the rest of our lives together. Atticus pulled her close. Besides, it gives me time to save money. A deputy's salary is not much, but if I am careful, I can afford to rent us a small house. Nothing fancy, but a place of our own. I do not need fancy, I just need you. They courted properly, under the watchful eyes of Mrs. Fletcher and the whole town of Circleville. Atticus took Katherine to church socials and town gatherings. They went on chaperoned picnics when the weather allowed. He continued to visit every evening, and they spent hours talking about their future. How many children do you want? Katherine asked one evening. I have not given it much thought. I never expected to have a family at all. How many do you want? At least 3. I was an only child, and I always wished for siblings. I want our children to have brothers and sisters. 3 sounds good, a whole houseful of little ones. Atticus smiled at the thought. Will they all have your stubbornness and your kindness? Though I hope they get my charm and your good looks. I am not sure I have good looks. You are very handsome, Atticus. Have you never looked in a mirror? He laughed, that warm sound that Katherine loved. I will take your word for it. Christmas came, and Atticus gave Katherine a ring. It was simple, just a thin gold band, but it fit perfectly and represented everything they were to each other. It is not much, he said as he slipped it onto her finger, but I wanted you to have something, a promise that I am yours and you are mine. It is perfect, I love it. Katherine kissed him softly. I love you. I love you too, more than I can say. They set the wedding for April, when the spring flowers would be blooming and the weather would be warm. Katherine spent her free time sewing her wedding dress, a simple but elegant creation in cream-colored cotton. Atticus worked extra hours to save money, and by March he had enough to rent a small house on the edge of town. It had 2 bedrooms, a kitchen, a parlor, and a tiny yard. It was perfect. The night before the wedding, Katherine could not sleep. She lay in her bed at the boarding house, thinking about how much her life had changed. A year ago, she had been living on her uncle's farm, working hard but content. Then the accident, the horrible journey, the moment she thought she would die alone in the desert. And then Atticus. The lonely cowboy who had stopped and said, "Rest here, I will carry you now." He had carried her, literally and figuratively, through the darkest time of her life. And somehow, in that carrying, they had both found healing. The wedding was held in the small church in Circleville on a beautiful April morning. Dr. Charles walked Katherine down the aisle, since she had no father to do so. The entire town seemed to be there, packed into the pews to witness the marriage of the deputy and the seamstress who had survived the desert. Atticus stood at the altar in a new suit, his face serious and solemn until Katherine appeared. Then he smiled, that brilliant smile that was for her alone, and Katherine felt her heart swell with so much love she thought it might burst. The ceremony was simple and traditional. They spoke their vows clearly, firmly, looking into each other's eyes and meaning every word. When the preacher pronounced them husband and wife, Atticus kissed her with gentle reverence, and the church erupted in applause. The reception was held at the town hall, with food brought by seemingly everyone in Circleville. There was dancing and music and laughter. Katherine danced with Atticus despite her leg, the cane he had made her leaning against their table. She still limped, still always would, but it did not matter. She was alive. She was married to the man she loved. She was happy. "What are you thinking?" Atticus asked as they swayed together to a slow song. "That I am the luckiest woman alive. I am fairly certain I am the lucky one. We can both be lucky." She rested her head against his chest. "I was also thinking about that day in the desert, about how close I came to dying. And how you saved me. You saved yourself, I just helped. You did more than help, you gave me everything. A future I thought I had lost, hope when I had none, love I never expected to find." She looked up at him. "You are my miracle, Atticus. And you are mine." He kissed her forehead. "I was so lost before I found you, drifting through life without purpose. And then there you were, broken and hurting, and you needed me. No one had needed me in so long. No one had given me a reason to stay anywhere. But you did. I will always need you, and I will always give you reasons to stay." "Good, because I am not going anywhere. You are stuck with me now, Mrs. Abernathy." Katherine smiled at the new name. Mrs. Abernathy, Katherine Abernathy. It sounded right. It sounded like home. They moved into their little house that night, and Katherine thought it was the most beautiful place she had ever seen. It was theirs. Their home. The beginning of their life together. The first year of marriage was an adjustment, as all first years are. They learned each other's habits, each other's moods. Atticus learned that Katherine was grumpy before her morning coffee. Katherine learned that Atticus had nightmares sometimes, echoes of the war, and that the best thing she could do was just hold him and remind him he was safe. They learned to compromise, to communicate, to work together as partners. Katherine's sewing business grew. She took on bigger projects, including making wedding dresses for other brides. Atticus was promoted to senior deputy with a raise in pay. They were not wealthy, but they were comfortable. More importantly, they were happy. In the fall of 1874, Katherine discovered she was pregnant. She told Atticus over dinner, simply and directly, "I am going to have a baby." Atticus dropped his fork. "A baby? Are you certain?" Dr. Charles confirmed it this afternoon. "The baby should arrive in May." Atticus came around the table and pulled her into his arms. "A baby? We are going to have a baby." His voice was thick with emotion. "This is the best news, the absolute best news." "You are happy then?" "Katherine, I am beyond happy. I am overwhelmed. I am terrified. I am everything." He pulled back to look at her face. "Are you happy?" "I am thrilled. Scared too, but thrilled. We are going to be parents. We are going to be parents," Katherine laughed. This is really happening. Our family is growing. They spent the winter preparing. Atticus built a cradle, working on it every evening, carving the same delicate flowers into the wood that he had carved into Catherine's cane. Catherine sewed tiny clothes and blankets. They argued good-naturedly over names, making lists, and then crossing off names and making new lists. In May of 1875, Catherine went into labor. It was long and difficult, her leg making the process more complicated. Dr. Charles was there, as was Sarah, and they talked Catherine through each contraction, each push. Atticus waited outside, pacing the floor until finally, after 18 hours, he heard the sharp cry of a newborn baby. Dr. Charles opened the door. "You have a son, a healthy boy, and your wife is doing well." Atticus rushed inside. Catherine lay in their bed, exhausted but smiling, holding a tiny bundle wrapped in one of the blankets she had made. "Come meet your son," she said softly. Atticus approached almost reverently. He looked down at the tiny red face, the small hands waving in the air, and felt his heart crack open. "He is perfect, Catherine, he is absolutely perfect. You want to hold him. I am afraid I will drop him." "You will not drop him. You have the steadiest hands of anyone I know." Catherine showed him how to hold the baby, how to support the tiny head. Atticus cradled his son with infinite care, staring down at the small life they had created. "Hello, little one, I am your father, and I promise to take care of you, to keep you safe, to love you with everything I have." The baby yawned, a huge yawn for such a small person, and both parents laughed. "What should we name him?" Catherine asked. They had gone through dozens of names but never settled on one. Now, looking at their son, Atticus said, "What about Andrew? Andrew Charles Abernathy, after Dr. Charles, who helped save you and now helped bring our son into the world." "Andrew Charles Abernathy, that is perfect." Catherine reached out to touch the baby's tiny hand. "Welcome to the world, Andrew. We are so happy you are here." Life with a baby was exhausting and wonderful. Andrew was a good baby, only crying when he was hungry or needed changing. He had Atticus's dark hair and Catherine's eyes. He grew quickly, hitting every milestone right on time. Atticus was a devoted father, coming home from work and immediately taking over baby duty so Catherine could rest. He walked Andrew around the house, singing to him in a low, off-key voice that made Catherine smile every time she heard it. When Andrew was a year old, Catherine became pregnant again. This time she knew what to expect, and while she was still nervous, she was not terrified. Their second child, a daughter they named Alice Margaret, was born in the spring of 1877. She was smaller than Andrew had been, more delicate but just as perfect. "Two children," Atticus said, holding Alice while Andrew toddled around the room. "We have 2 children." "You said you wanted a houseful," Catherine reminded him. "I did. And I do. This is everything I never knew I wanted." They settled into the rhythm of family life. Andrew grew into a curious, energetic boy who asked endless questions and got into everything. Alice was quieter, more thoughtful, but with a stubborn streak that reminded everyone of her mother. Catherine continued her sewing work, though she had less time for it now with 2 young children to care for. Atticus was appointed sheriff when Sheriff Dalton retired in 1879, a promotion that came with more responsibility but also more respect. In the fall of 1879, Catherine became pregnant for the 3rd time. Their 3rd child, a son they named Daniel Thomas, was born in June of 1880. He was a big, healthy baby with a loud cry and a voracious appetite. With 3 children under the age of 6, life in the Abernathy household was chaotic and loud and full of love. One evening, after all 3 children were finally asleep, Catherine and Atticus sat on the porch of their house, watching the sun set over the Utah landscape. "Can you believe how much our lives have changed?" Katherine asked, leaning against Atticus's shoulder. "Sometimes I wake up and think I am dreaming, that none of this can be real." He put his arm around her. 7 years ago, I was a lonely drifter with no purpose, and now I am a husband and father with a family I love and a job that matters. It does not seem possible. 7 years ago, I was dying in a wagon, certain I would never see another sunrise. And now look at us. 3 beautiful children, a home, a life. Katherine took his hand. "We have built something remarkable, Atticus. We have. And it all started because I happened to ride past a broken wagon at exactly the right moment. Or exactly the wrong moment, depending on how you look at it. If you had passed an hour earlier or an hour later, you would have missed me entirely. I do not want to think about that. I do not want to imagine a world where I did not find you." He kissed her temple. "Everything good in my life started the day I found you. You are my entire world, Katherine. And you are mine. You carried me when I could not carry myself. You loved me when I felt unlovable. You gave me everything." She turned to look at him. "I love you, Atticus, more today than yesterday and not as much as tomorrow. I love you too, always and forever." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars come out one by one, grateful for the twists of fate that had brought them together. The years passed in the way years do when you are happy and busy. The children grew. Andrew became tall and serious like his father, showing an early aptitude for woodworking. Alice loved books and stories, spending hours reading anything she could get her hands on. Daniel was the wild one, always climbing trees and chasing after frogs and coming home covered in mud. Catherine's leg never fully healed, and she always walked with a limp and the beautiful cane Atticus had made her. But it did not slow her down. She remained active in the community, teaching sewing classes and organizing church socials. She became known as someone who would help anyone in need, perhaps because she remembered so well what it was like to need help and not receive it. Atticus thrived as sheriff. He was fair and honest, gaining the respect of the entire county. He rarely had to use violence, preferring to talk situations down when possible. The skills he had learned as a medic served him well, as he was often called to help with injuries or accidents. He became a pillar of the community, someone people trusted and relied on. In 1885, when Andrew was 10, Alice was 8, and Daniel was 5. Atticus came home one evening with surprising news. "The town council approached me today," he said over dinner. "They want to name me as mayor when Mayor Stevens steps down next year." Katherine set down her fork. "Mayor, that is a huge responsibility." "I know. I told them I needed to discuss it with my wife before making any decisions." He looked at her seriously. "What do you think?" "I think you would make an excellent mayor. You are smart and fair and people trust you, but it would mean less time at home, less time with the children. I know. That is what I am worried about." "Papa, you should be mayor," Andrew said excitedly. "That would be so important." "We would have the most important papa in town," Alice added. Daniel just said, "What does a mayor do?" They all laughed. That night, after the children were in bed, Atticus and Katherine talked through the decision. In the end, they decided he would accept. It was an honor and an opportunity to serve their community in a bigger way. Atticus served as mayor from 1886 to 1892. 6 years of steady leadership during which Circleville continued to grow and prosper. He oversaw the construction of a new school, improvements to the town's water system, and the establishment of a proper hospital. All the while, he never forgot where he came from or the people who had helped him along the way. The children grew into teenagers, each developing their own interests and personalities. Andrew, at 18, began an apprenticeship with the town carpenter, showing remarkable skill at woodworking. Alice, at 16, was accepted to a teaching college in Salt Lake City, planning to become a teacher. Daniel, at 13, was still deciding what he wanted to do but showed an interest in medicine, having helped Dr. Charles on several occasions. In 1893, as Katherine and Atticus celebrated their 19th wedding anniversary, they looked back on the life they had built with profound gratitude. 19 years, Katherine said, sitting on the porch swing Atticus had built years ago. Can you believe it has been that long? It feels like yesterday and a lifetime ago all at once. Atticus sat beside her, the swing creaking gently. Do you ever think about that day in the desert? Sometimes. Not as often as I used to, but yes, sometimes I think about it, about how scared I was. About how certain I was that I would die. She leaned her head on his shoulder. And then you appeared, my rescuer, my love. I was the one who was rescued, Katherine. You saved me just as much as I saved you. You gave me purpose. You gave me a reason to stop running and start living. We saved each other then, she smiled. That seems fitting. They sat together as the sun set, as they had done so many evenings before, comfortable in the silence of long companionship. 3 children were inside, arguing good-naturedly about something. Their house was full of life and love. Their town was thriving. Their life together was everything they could have hoped for. Andrew married at 21, a sweet girl named Rebecca from the next town over. They gave Katherine and Atticus their first grandchild, a boy named after Atticus, in 1896. Alice became a teacher, as she had planned, and married one of her fellow teachers when she was 23. Daniel decided to become a doctor, studying under Dr. Charles before going east for formal medical training. As the new century approached, Atticus and Katherine found themselves with an empty nest and more time than they had had in years. They took long walks together, Katherine still using the cane Atticus had carved 25 years earlier. They traveled a bit, visiting their children and grandchildren. But mostly they just enjoyed being together, the easy companionship of 2 people who had spent decades learning to love each other more deeply each day. On their 30th wedding anniversary in 1904, the town of Circleville threw them a huge celebration. It seemed like everyone they had ever known was there. Sheriff Dalton, now retired and in his 80s, made a speech about how hiring Atticus was the best decision he had ever made. Dr. Charles, also retired but still sharp as a tack, told the story of the day Atticus carried Katherine into town. Mrs. Fletcher, who still ran the boarding house at 75, talked about the romance that had blossomed under her watchful eye. When it was Atticus's turn to speak, he stood with Katherine's hand in his and addressed the crowd. 30 years ago, I was a lost man with no direction and no hope. I was riding through the desert, going nowhere in particular, when I found a woman in a broken wagon. She was hurt and alone and needed help. I stopped because it was the right thing to do, but the truth is she helped me more than I helped her. Katherine gave me a reason to stay in one place. She gave me love. She gave me a family. She gave me a life worth living. His voice thickened with emotion. Everything good in my life traces back to that day. So thank you, Katherine, for letting me carry you, for trusting me, for loving me. You are my whole heart. There was not a dry eye in the room. Katherine stood and kissed him, and the crowd erupted in applause. That night, lying in bed in the house they had shared for 3 decades, Katherine said, "That was a beautiful speech. I meant every word. I know you did. That is what made it beautiful." She turned to face him. 30 years. We have had 30 wonderful years together. And I am greedy enough to want 30 more. I will do my best to give them to you. We have had a good life, Atticus, better than good, extraordinary. We have, And it is not over yet. We still have more living to do, more grandchildren to spoil, more sunsets to watch together. He pulled her close. I love you, Katherine, more now than ever. I love you too. Always. The years continued to pass, each one bringing new joys and new challenges. More grandchildren arrived, filling their house with noise and laughter during visits. Atticus and Katherine grew older, their hair turning gray and then white, their steps slower but still sure. Through it all, they remained devoted to each other, their love deepening with each passing year. In 1910, as they sat on the porch together watching their great-grandchildren play in the yard, Atticus said, "We have been blessed, Katherine. More blessed than two people have any right to be. We have. Though I am not sure it is just luck. I think we made our own blessings by choosing to love each other every day, by working through the hard times and celebrating the good times, by building a life together one day at a time. You are right. Love is not just something that happens. It is something you choose. And I have chosen you every single day for 36 years. I will keep choosing you for as long as I live." Katherine took his hand, the same hand that had first lifted her from a broken wagon so many years ago. "And I will keep choosing you, today, tomorrow, and forever." As the sun set over the Utah landscape, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold, Katherine and Atticus sat together in the peace of a love well earned. They had traveled far from that desperate day in the desert, but in all the ways that mattered, they had arrived exactly where they were meant to be, together. Home. Complete. Their story was one of pain transformed into healing, loneliness transformed into love, and despair transformed into hope. It was a story of one lonely cowboy who stopped to help one suffering woman, and in that stopping, found everything he had been searching for. It was a story of how sometimes the greatest journeys are not the ones we plan, but the ones that find us when we are broken and lost. And it was a story that would be told in Circleville for generations to come. The story of Katherine and Atticus, the seamstress and the sheriff, whose love began in the desert and lasted a lifetime. A testament to the power of kindness, the strength of the human spirit, and the transformative power of love. In the spring of 1915, at the age of 64, Katherine fell ill. It was pneumonia, Dr. Charles's son told them. Her lungs were weak, her body tired from a lifetime of battling the lingering effects of that long-ago injury. Atticus refused to leave her side, sitting by her bed day and night, holding her hand and telling her stories of their life together. "Do you remember," he said softly one evening, "when I carried you to Circleville? You were so light in my arms, so fragile, but even then I could feel your strength, your will to survive." Katherine smiled weakly. "I remember thinking you were the most stubborn man I had ever met. You would not let me give up. You just kept walking, no matter how tired you were. I could not let you give up. The moment I saw you, I knew you were important. I did not know then that you would become my whole world, but somehow I knew. We have had a beautiful life, Atticus. We have. And we will have more years yet. You will get better. You have to get better." But Katherine knew, and Atticus knew, even as he refused to accept it. Her body was failing. She had fought so hard for so long, but she was tired. "Promise me something," she whispered. "Anything. Promise me you will not stop living when I am gone. Promise me you will keep choosing joy. Keep spending time with our children and grandchildren. Keep watching the sunsets. Keep living. Katherine, please promise me, Atticus." He bowed his head, tears streaming down his face. "I promise. But I do not know how to live without you. The same way I would have had to live without you if our situations were reversed, one day at a time, one moment at a time, carrying me with you in your heart." She squeezed his hand weakly. "I will never really be gone, my love. I will be in every sunset you watch, in every flower you see, In the faces of our children and grandchildren. I will be there." Katherine died 3 days later, surrounded by her family with Atticus holding her hand. She slipped away peacefully, a soft smile on her face, as though she could see something beautiful waiting for her. The town of Circleville mourned. Katherine had touched so many lives with her kindness and her strength. The funeral was packed, with people coming from all over the county to pay their respects. Atticus stood at the graveside, supported by his sons on either side, and said goodbye to the woman who had been his everything for 42 years. True to his promise, Atticus continued living. It was hard. Some days it felt impossible, but he showed up for his children and grandchildren. He continued to serve his community. He carved beautiful things from wood and gave them away to anyone who needed them. And every evening, he sat on the porch swing and watched the sunset, talking to Katherine as though she were still beside him. 3 years later, in 1918, Atticus died peacefully in his sleep at the age of 70. His children found him in the morning, still and quiet, with a faint smile on his face. On his nightstand was the tintype photograph of him and Katherine on their wedding day, young and hopeful and so deeply in love. They buried him beside Katherine in the Circleville cemetery. The entire town attended, celebrating the life of a man who had served them well and loved deeply. His great-grandchildren, too young to truly understand, ran between the headstones, their laughter a reminder that life continues, that love creates echoes that last long after we are gone. Years later, when those great-grandchildren were grown, they would tell the story of their great-grandparents to their own children. They would tell about the lonely cowboy who found a dying woman in the desert and stopped to help. About how he carried her 5 miles through the heat when he could have ridden on. About how that one act of kindness blossomed into a love story that spanned decades. About how 2 broken people found wholeness in each other. The story became part of Circleville's history, a tale told and retold, each generation adding their own embellishments but keeping the heart of it true. It became a story about the power of compassion, about the importance of stopping when someone needs help, about the unexpected ways love can find us when we least expect it. And somewhere, in some place beyond the reach of earthly pain, Katherine and Atticus were together again. No more broken legs or empty hearts or lonely wandering. Just 2 souls who had found each other against all odds, bound together by a love that transcended time and space and death itself. Together forever, as they were always meant to be, the wagon had carried her across 3 states in pain. The lonely cowboy had said, "Rest here, I will carry you now." And in that carrying, in that moment of compassion and connection, 2 lives were forever changed. 2 people who had been lost found their way home. And a love story for the ages was born. This was their story. This was their truth. This was the legacy they left behind, not wealth or fame or worldly success, but something far more valuable. They left behind the knowledge that one person can make all the difference, that stopping to help someone in need can change not just their life, but your own. That love, real love, is built not in grand gestures but in small, everyday choices to show up, to care, to be present. Katherine and Atticus's story lived on in Circleville, a reminder that heroes are not always the ones who win wars or conquer lands. Sometimes heroes are simply people who stop when they could keep riding, who carry burdens that are not their own, who choose compassion over convenience, who love deeply and completely, transforming both themselves and those around them. Their descendants continue to live in Utah, spreading throughout the state and beyond. Each carried with them the story of their remarkable ancestors. Each learned the lesson that Katherine and Atticus had lived, that we are all connected, that we all need each other, that love and kindness are the most powerful forces in the world. The house they had shared was eventually torn down to make way for new development, but the porch swing was saved and donated to the local historical society. The cane Atticus had carved for Katherine was passed down through the generations, eventually ending up in a place of honor in the family home of their oldest grandson. The cradle Atticus had built for Andrew was used by each subsequent generation, rocking great-great-great-grandchildren to sleep more than a century after it had first been carved. These objects, these physical remnants of their life together, became touchstones for the family. Reminders of where they came from, of the love that had started it all, but more than the physical objects, what endured was the spirit of Katherine and Atticus, the way they had lived their lives with integrity and compassion, the way they had loved each other fiercely and faithfully through all circumstances, the way they had built something beautiful from the ashes of pain and loneliness. Their story was not just a historical footnote or a family legend. It was a living testament to the resilience of the human spirit. A proof that no matter how broken we are, no matter how lost we feel, there is always the possibility of healing, of finding someone who will carry us when we cannot carry ourselves, of building a life worth living from the scattered pieces of what we thought was destroyed. The wagon had carried her across 3 states in pain, each mile a torture, each moment a step closer to death. But then came the lonely cowboy with his empty eyes and his skilled hands and his capacity for compassion that he had forgotten he possessed. He had said, "Rest here, I will carry you now." And he had carried her, not just 5 miles to town, but through recovery and healing and into a whole new life. And she had carried him too in her own way, bringing light into his darkness, purpose into his wandering, love into his loneliness. They had saved each other. 2 people who desperately needed saving, finding exactly what they needed in each other at exactly the right moment. And from that mutual saving, from that moment of connection in the desert, grew a love that sustained them through 4 decades of marriage, through the raising of children, through joys and sorrows, through all the ordinary and extraordinary moments that make up a human life. This was their gift to the world, the knowledge that we are never too broken to be healed, never too lost to be found, never too alone to be loved. That sometimes the worst moments of our lives are actually doorways to the best moments. That suffering can be transformed into beauty if we are willing to accept help and to help others in turn. Katherine and Atticus Abernathy lived, loved, and died in Circleville, Utah. They were not famous beyond their small community. They did not change the course of history or achieve anything the world would consider remarkable, but they changed each other. They raised good children who became good parents who raised good children in turn. They served their community with dedication and integrity. They loved each other with a depth and faithfulness that inspired everyone who knew them. And in the end, is there anything more important than that? To love and be loved, to help and be helped, to live with purpose and die with peace. To leave the world a little better than you found it, even if that better is measured only in the lives you touched directly, the people you helped, the love you shared. The wagon carried her across 3 states in pain. The lonely cowboy said, "Rest here, I will carry you now." And in that moment, everything changed. 2 lives were redirected toward each other. 2 hearts found their home. And a love story began that would echo through generations, reminding everyone who heard it that love is always possible, help is always worth giving, and sometimes the people who save us are the ones who needed saving just as much. This is the story of Katherine and Atticus Abernathy, told in full, from beginning to end, from pain to healing, from loneliness to love, from brokenness to wholeness. May their story inspire others to stop when they see someone hurting, to help when they see someone struggling, to love when they feel love stirring in their hearts. May it remind us all that we are capable of more compassion, more courage, more love than we think we are. And may it stand as a testament to the truth that love, real love, can transform everything.